Hi, this is Karthik, and today I'm going to be presenting a paper on computational creativity and storytelling. This was written by an author named Pablo Gervis, and he published this as an article in the AI magazine in 2009. Okay. A little bit about the author. So he holds a PhD in computing from Imperial College, University of London, and he currently works as a professor at a university in Madrid. And you can find more information about him in this link. So, what is this paper basically about? It is about computer producing stories. So, it is also about creativity. Like, how would you define creativity in computational terms? And it is also about how computers tell stories. So, storytelling by computers. So when it comes to creativity and storytelling, like every person has a different idea about it. So like there is a room and people are asked to be creative, they'll probably come up with different ideas. Like everybody will have their different ideas. And when it comes to storytelling, like if a person is asked to tell a story, even if it's the same story, like every person will be telling it in a different way. Yeah. So this article actually deals with those aspects of a story that can be modeled computationally. Now, the author generally describes the creativity process as something like this, that there has to be a creative agent, which we'll call as creator, and he has to create something new. And that something new has to be creating some kind of an output. Now, that output should ideally be satisfying some kind of goal. And there has to be someone, like a new agent, which will like evaluate whether the idea that or the creative process that we have done so far has satisfied the goal or not. Okay. As you can see, this is a very vague process. And for computers to do this, it's going to be a tough task. So, for describing computational creativity, so this was actually proposed by Margaret Borden in 1990. Okay. So she suggests two concepts to look at. One is historical, and the other one is psychological view of creativity. According to her, historical creativity, which is edge creativity, is the ideas, generation of those ideas that have never before appeared to anyone at all in human history. And the psychological creativity is like creating an idea that had not occurred to me before. Like it's just from a human perspective, for that person's perspective, for something that is new to that person. Okay. Yeah. So, like, if you are to have to understand this from a computer point of view, a computer will need to have access to all the things that have happened in history in order to achieve his edge creativity. And for P creativity, I think it's kind of simple. Just it has to generate something that it has not generated before. Okay. Okay. She also describes the concept of traversing a conceptual space. Conceptual space is basically a space full of ideas. Now, she explains two concepts. One is exploratory creativity, and the other is transformational creativity. Now, exploratory creativity is something like exploring the ideas that are outside the scope. For example, let's say we are in a room, we are in a house, and we are looking for ideas that are outside the house. For transformational creativity, it means although we are in the house, there are certain ideas that previously were not accessible to us because they were some ideas in some kind of a closed room. And now those rooms are like suddenly becoming accessible to us. So that is where transformational creativity comes into picture. Okay. So it is just basically reaching for ideas that were not accessible before. Okay. Okay, the author then described creativity from writing perspective. It was something that is proposed by Sharples. So he described a writing process as a problem-solving process where the writer is both a creative thinker and a designer of text. Okay, so so according to him, that the universe in which the writing can be explored is all the sentences, correctly formed sentences, according to grammar. But this is too wide, the universe. Like if we are writing something, we don't want to like throw up any kind of sentence that is like a valid sentence. It has to be in some context. It has to be appropriate for the problem at hand. Okay, so that's what Sharp describes. Then there's another person, Richie, whose take on creativity is as follows. Like he describes creativity as containing the following qualities. First one is novelty, that whatever we are creating is dissimilar to the existing examples in that genre. Then he describes quality. To what extent is the creative thing that we have generated is of high quality? Okay. Then he talks about the concept of inspiring fit. So whenever we are creating something, there has to be some kind of inspiration behind it. And uh, so our question of creativity is whether we can go beyond that inspiration. So which I think we'll address that more in the upcoming slides. Okay. Then he's also talking about creative autonomy. So it's a system's ability to evaluate itself what it has created, and that is what is called creative autonomy. Okay. So let's see now what is a story. The story, like, it consists of a lot of things. It has a time, it's a timeline. Basically, it has space, it has characters, it has feelings of those characters, dialogue, goal of these characters, then their plans to achieve those goals, and so on. So our idea of a good story would be like to combine all these features together properly so that they form a coherent story. Now, this for computers to do is a very difficult task. Okay. So this article basically focuses on the elements that have so far been modeled, like chronology, the event in the organization of the event, and the focalization. The focalization is basically like when we have multiple characters in a room, and at a time, which characters do we want to focus on right now? That's is focalization. Causality is basically in what causes event B to happen because of an event A. Because when we can say that event B is a cause of event A and so on. Then it's talking about fabula, like what is the content that is being told. And discourse is basically about narration. How is it being told? Like, is it being told in flashback? Is it being told in a chronological order? Or, how emotionally, and all those things that are a part of the discourse. So then let's dive into a brief history of the storytelling systems that have so far been developed. Okay. So we'll go look at them one by one, and we'll just look at them at a very high level because there are so many systems right now. Okay. So the first one that is considered is done by Sheldon Klein, and it is called a system called Novel Writer. Okay. Now it only like deals with murder mystery stories within the context of a weekend party. And his plan was to like create a story generator that can publish a novel as though like it is published by a human. Okay. Okay. So it was based on a simulation model. Like so the behaviors of that individual characters and the events that transpired were governed by probabilistic rules. Okay. So basically, a description of the world in which the story was to take place was provided as an input. Then the murderer and the victim and all those things were decided by the AI. And the motives as well, they arrive as a function of events that occur during the course of the story. And but the one thing that was hard coded was the sequence of things. Those were all hard coded. And yeah, and this was a very constrained system. Like it does not allow too much creativity in it. So it's like it was only like generating one specific type of stories. Okay. Okay, and this localization in this system was done through a use of private semantic universes. Okay. So here's a simple example of the story dense author. Now, its idea was to simulate an author's mind in writing stories. So Den believed that whenever author is trying to write a story, he already has some of these goals in his mind, and he somehow like events in his mind, and he's just somehow trying to connect them in a way that it forms a story. So basically, a story is understood as an achievement of complex web of author goals. Okay, so for this system, the input was some author goals, as I say, and we try to something like the goals could be something like make the story dramatic, illustrate key facts, and so on. Okay. So it also this system was a little advanced. It has the process of something called creative reasoning. So what creative reasoning means is that it was to capture two general characteristics. So degree to which a process is deliberate and a degree to which it is serendipitous. Like something it is happening is just by chance. Okay. So this was something that allowed it to be very creative, the serendipity part of it. Okay. So next on the list is Lebowitz universe. Now, so this was something that could create, scripts for a TV soap opera. So I think the main goal of the system was melodrama. And it was not a system that will give you a complete story. It was just meant to be an aid to someone who was writing a story. Okay. And it used is the concept of plot fragments. Plot fragments are basically simple units of plans. Okay. And it is not exactly like it kind of uses the tree structure as you can see over here. Okay. But it is not like it is a depth first search, like it will go on in one branch at all. So as you can see over here, like if it is following a one branch of it is just following based on which branch satisfies the most amount of author goals. And let's say at a point in a branch where it understands that there is another like unit which will like satisfy more amount of author goals, it will just move to a different branch entirely. Okay, so that is what this Lebowitz universe system is all, and it has something. It has a concept of generalizing plot. So basically, what generalizing plot is that um, it could use an existing plot fragment and it could generate a new plot fragment. So basically, it was trying to be creative by generating something that it did not have in the system at all. Like it is generating a new branch, a plot fragment based on some old plot fragment that it has developed. Okay, that the user has not input something like that. And that's where it's trying to be a little creative. So here's an example story that was generated by the system. I mean, you can have a look at it later in the slides. Yeah. Okay. So next, okay. So next on the list is Mexica. Okay. So Mexica was like designed to be use the concept of cycle of engagement and reflection. Now, what this concept is, cycle of engagement is like you generate a sequence of actions, okay? Then you reflect on it whether those actions are appropriate or not. You'll take some actions, you will skip some actions, or you will make some changes to the system based on those actions that were selected. So this was the continuous process that was going on. Okay. So, like this was designed to basically generate short stories about early inhabitants of Mexico, and it relied on using previous stories as well that was generated by it. So it has a database of like the previous stories that it had generated. So this helped it like so that when it is generating any new story, it is not generating the story that was similar to the previous story. This was one of the systems that at least implemented an historical creativity. Like it will not generate the same stories again and again. So it's a simple example. So, okay, the other one that we have, the last system that we are going to talk about today is the narrator system. Okay, now so far, what the stories that the systems that we were dealing with, they were mostly concentrated on like the story generation part. That nobody was like specifically interested in storytelling. So and so they basically what they did was they told the story in a certain chronological order only. But this system had special focus on the narration of the story, like it allowed for telling stories in flashback, flash forward, interleaving of events from two different time periods, and telling events back and forth. It also so it was more focused on narration, so it has a special focalization word implemented that would allow you to have focalization. Okay, yeah. So this was a very good system, I think. Okay, now let's do some analysis of the system in terms of creativity that we have so far. Like the another thing that creativity was talked about was evaluating whether the system was creative enough or not, whether it was generating stories that were novel or not. Like most of the systems, like we have seen so far, failed at it. Like Mexica uses like previous stories as a reference to check whether it has generated a new story or not. So yeah, it implements a little bit of evaluation. And there was a fabulous, which we used to take model audience perception of believability of characters. So yeah, other than that, the other storage system did not do much when it comes to evaluating the story that they created. Okay. So another thing that I think I said I will talk about is the inspiring set. So for example, for the novel writer, the weekend party murders were the inspiring set, and the story generated by it was also about weekend party murders. So it is like same for each one of the systems that we have seen so far. Like whatever is the inspiring set, they are also generating stories in the same genre. They are not going beyond it. Okay, so if you had to evaluate this systems in terms of going beyond the inspiring set, none of them would be successful in that. Now, evaluating the quality of stories, like except for Mexipa, which has like external evaluations of the quality of the stories by done by human readers. None of the other systems did anything to like look into the quality of the stories that were being generated. Okay. And then when it comes to transformational creativity, like opening closed doors, so then describes the process of creative reasoning, level, which we talk about, like it's the actions that it takes are part deliberate and directed, and the part are just by chance that the action was taken, it's serendipitous. And this allowed it to like be capable of identifying unforeseen opportunities during planning and deviating from its original goals to follow them. Okay. Similarly, like for universe, it did the concept of generalizing plot fragments, like generating new plot fragments from the old plot fragments. And so it also implemented a little bit of transformational creativity. So then the next one is like the Turner's Minstrel. So it was centers his development of minstrel on the specific order, how to find and use old knowledge in a new ways. And so it was similar to what Lebowitz universe did as well. So this system used something called trams to constitute a like to example of a possible computation solution to that problem. Okay. And the last one is fabulous. Like it allows the planner to modify the given input world in order to meet the required goals. And this would turn as the transformational creativity for it. Okay. Now, telling stories and focalization, I think the winner is in that case is like basically our narrator, and the rest of them like they did part of it. Like, for example, writer did a representation of different focalized worlds of the world, and how that's how it achieved focalization, but it did not do much about how to tell stories. Then in case of virtual storyteller, it has its own knowledge base. Like every agent has its own knowledge base, and it allowed for a focalization. And for like Tailspin, like it models character perception as physical space in terms of maps, which is crucial for completing what each character sees of that story. So, in my opinion, I think this paper like does a very good job of setting up what creativity means and computational terms and how the systems has evolved over the years. And it is a very good start for someone who's like trying to get into this research area. And it has shown like how the systems has evolved over the years. But for if I had to look at this paper from a standalone point of view, it is like very difficult to understand because one may need very much prior understanding of the storytelling and the creativity process in terms of computational terms. And one more thing it does not, I think it does not do well is that it explored too many systems and on a very high level. So like none of the systems that we learn, we have seen it in depth or how they function exactly. So I believe that it could have like focus more on two or three systems, and that would be have made the paper more understandable. Yeah. So that's about it. And here are some reference.